inside the Parisi Palace, high above 2919 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show on Power Talk 1210 KEVT, Sahuarita, Tucson. Thank you to all for making us part of your day today. My show revolves around the 4 L's: leadership, love, life, and lineage, and the ongoing story of real music made by real artists. The spiritual side to music is the unquantifiable part, the place that the whole band has to go to for the music to transcend. My guest was marinating in a bastion of musical growth and experimentation in the San Francisco Bay Area. His dad was a major player and took his son to see Lydia Pence in cold blood in his pajamas when he was 12 years old. His guitar playing came from an amalgamation of jazz, rock, blues, and funk players, along with his own touches and colors and verbiage. He communicates with heavy cats like Rocco Prestia and Dave Margen and Carlos Santana. He's been a sideman and seen the value of a musician move from an occupation to a pay-to-play art form. He is adaptable and stayed friends with cats along the way like Emilio Castillo and Billy Kreutzmann. What an honor. Jerry Cortez, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Hey, Jake, how you doing?
Nice to talk to you, man.
You too. Nice to hear your voice again.
Absolutely. Hey, I just wanted you to comment a little bit. I know you're gigging with Tower of Power, and I'm sure you do a lot of clinics, and I assume that you have made a career as a musician. But what do you think about today's mantra about like the pay to play mentality?
Well, I'm not for it. That's for sure.
How did we get there? How did we get there?
Yeah, it actually started a while ago. I can remember, I used to play. There was a wonderful group of clubs known as the Keystones. There was one in Berkeley, and there was one in San Francisco, and there was one in Palo Alto, and they were all pretty much run by the same family. And I remember towards the end of their run, and they had everybody. Sons of Chaplin, Cold Blood played there, Tower of Power, and even Santana, and even the Stones would every once in a while would show up at a place like that unannounced just to see how some new material would work on a crowd. Mm-hmm. And then eventually within like probably around I want to say mid 80s or so, it seemed like they were starting to, because I ended up I remember I ended up in a band with a really great singer-songwriter and a bunch of great musicians, but we were really just starting out as a group, and we had all had played with well-known people ourselves at one point. We put together a band and we were trying to sell it, and they literally asked us to pay to play there, and we're like, what? Are you kidding? This is the Keystone? So, and I remember we might have been opening for some band like the Dixie Dregs or Level 42 or something like that. I remember, but they were asking the openers to like you have to bring in your own following. We're not going to be paying you guys. We're like, okay. Yeah. And I had nothing to do with our singer. Went, well, we got to do this because it's a good gig. So I don't remember what happened with it, but I just remembered, man, this is how this happened. I really don't even know myself how it came to be, but there are still some places where you actually can go into a place and still make a little bit of eke out a little bit of a living playing some clubs and things like that. I think it's I think more so musicians. Well, I can speak from the Bay Area because that's where I have experience. I was there until I was 50 years old, and now I live outside of Salt Lake City, and I really don't know what the scene is here. Wow. Because it's quite a bit different than the Bay Area, and I'm not right in Salt Lake. I'm kind of outside Salt Lake, so I never, I don't know what the scene is here, but I know that there are clubs here, and there are people that are working and all that sort of thing. But I can't answer the question how it came, because it's like you're not asking your plumber to come into your house and fix your faucet for free.
No, well, I was curious because I transcribed an excerpt from my interview with a great jazz drummer, Charlie Persip, and he said, one of the reasons, and he's talking from a Afro jazz kind of Afrocentric point of view, but he just said one of the reasons that the musicians in general are not held or not revered in the way that they should be is because they're constantly they're saying we play music. We got to play tonight. He goes, we're not playing. We don't play, man. We're not playing. And I wonder if you think that, I mean, because that term's been around forever. You know, I mean, I early on in my broadcasting career, I learned very quickly not to use the word jam with professional jazz musicians because a jam means that's free as opposed to a gig.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Do you think there's some validity in the idea of, I'm not sure what the replacement terminology would be, but just to say we play music, doesn't that just already give the impression of then they don't really, it's not really an occupation?
You're right. Geez.
You don't need to, I mean, I'm just getting your opinion. You don't, I mean, this is not a, we don't need, I didn't bring you on for solutions today. You know?
Yeah, right. No, well, hopefully I will have some.
Yeah, right.
But, you know, as far as just playing, perform, you know, but it's just one of those terms that just kind of rolls off our tongues, and I think it's kind of here to stay. I don't think it's going to, you know, change in any way, you know. And I think I think it's the musician themselves and how they feel about themselves as a person and a human being first. And all the rest of it will take care of itself as whether or not they're going to get paid or not.
Right.
So I think that has a lot to do with it as well, because I think there are some people that in some ways, no matter how hard they've worked, in a way they feel like, well, gosh, maybe I'm not worthy enough to do this, you know. But then again, there are people who are. You know, I think of the Beatles, man, and when my heroes. How John Lennon used to always say to the Beatles before, you know, the rest of the Beatles before they made it, you know, he'd always ask the Beatles, like, as a group, where are we going tonight, fellas? And they'd always go to the top of the poppermost, Johnny. So they always had this, like, we're doing this, man. We're a team, and we're going to do this, and you know, I mean, I think it even surprised them how well they did. You know, I think that they. You know, that they were just thinking that they were already starting to do well in England, and that's pretty much where I would have stayed. They had no idea that they were going to take on the momentum they did. So, anyway, but I can go on all day.
No, I mean, it's such an honor. I mean, you have no idea how
that started.
Yeah, it's such an honor to talk to Jerry Cortez today from Salt Lake City, or right outside Salt Lake. You know, I mean, one of the things that I look at as a momentum builder for, you know, a real commerce or a real getting paid, compensated as a musician, is being able to cultivate, you know, the spiritual part of a band. And I look at you growing up, you know, I mentioned Cold Blood, you had Sly Stone, you had the Grateful Dead, Jefferson Airplane, Graham Central Station. These were bands that were able to stay together. They were committed to it. You brought up the Beatles. They were in it together. How hard is it today, in today's climate, to keep a working band together outside of, like, the Tower of Power, which, quite frankly, is running on, you know, 40, 45 years, 50 years of reputation?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, I know it's tough. I can use my nephew. He's my brother's youngest son, my older brother's youngest son, who plays drums. My brother's also a drummer, and who's been a big influence on me as well. Growing up in the same bedroom with a guy who was, like, first in line at the record store to buy the latest and greatest, you name it, kind of record. I'm from jazz to blues to classical to everything. You know, got kind of he just wanted to be there. He knew when stuff was coming out, and he really literally stood in line for certain recordings and stuff. So it was really great to be around that, and that rubbed off on his own kids as well. And he has a son, and I don't think he's active with this band now, but they came from town. It was just a trio. It was 2 guitar players and drums, and sometimes one of the guys will play bass. But they were really literally living out of their van, and staying and along the way staying at people's places. And of course, we put them up when they came through town here.
Sure.
And they were off. They had to drive to Denver from Salt Lake to Denver, which is like 10 hours, and play a gig the same night. So they left here really early in the morning, and I know that they weren't making a whole lot of money, and they really weren't doing it for the money. They were really doing it just to see how well their music would go over to crowds, you know. because he was with two guys that were both really excellent songwriters, two young guys. And so I think it's really difficult. I mean, if people, you see the glamour stuff and whatever all that stuff they see on TV and all these shows like American Idol and all this kind of stuff, and you see the whole glamour of it. And then there's people like I said, like my nephew, and there's lots of other people. He said that there are a lot of other groups that are doing kind of the same thing they are, just traveling all over and playing the little dives and holes in the walls and kind of booking their own gigs and all that kind of stuff. If people are willing to live the life of a road dog, there could be a lot. There actually could be a lot of fun and a lot of growth even just as a human, just being out there and mixing it up and getting away from your own environment.
I think it's really
and getting out there, playing your music, and see how it goes over. I mean, I think that's really the main kick, and that's the main reason why I still go out and play.
Why do you think that they were? What was in their lyrics that made you think that they were good songwriters?
I got to say, I'm not one to hear lyrics first. That's almost like a secondary thing. For me anyway.
Sure.
And for a lot of people, it is lyrics is first. They're moved by the words. What kind of story is this telling me? The music is the story for me first. And so I listen at first I hear for a great melody. And then I hear for great harmony that's backing up that melody. And then just whatever creativity they bring to the song and the arrangement, that's what I hear first. And then I might even go through, there's even songs, recordings I've heard for the longest time, and I'll go back and I'll go, oh, that's what that song's about? Oh, that's insane. That's incredible. Like, just recently, not that long ago, I was at a campfire gathering, and I broke into that song, Horse with No Name, by America.
Sure.
Good song for a campfire. And there was about 25, 30 people sitting around the campfire, and so when I got done, somebody goes, that song's about kicking heroin addiction. I went, whoa, really?
Right.
I had no idea. And then I go, wow. If you kind of check out the lyrics, you can go, yeah, I could see how somebody trying to kick a heroin habit might be, kind of feel like they're kind of isolated down there, out in the middle of a desert, out in the middle of nowhere kind of thing. So anyway, so as far as lyrics go, and I'm still kind of that way. I hear the melody, the song, and all that. And it's always been that way. Even in pop songs, it's even songs that I like to sing along with the lyrics roll off my tongue and everything. It's still really more about the song, the music first for me. So
sure, no,
that's probably why I'm not that great a lyricist.
Well, no, I mean, I think that you had this. When I was interviewing Bill Champlin, he was talking about, he was really from this gut bucket, soul, grease, R&B side, and everyone was talking about, I'm a man, very, very, very shallow lyrics, and yet he had this folk scene. You had Dylan, and you had, Peter, Paul, and Mary. You had a plethora of amazing folk writers, songwriters that were just cranking out with great, powerful imagery and stories. And I wanted to ask you about one guy you worked with, about how, I know you listened for the music first, but Jesse Colin Young, I was hoping you could talk a little bit about his, maybe some of the stuff that people don't really, they take it for granted. He was a beautiful voice, but as far as his songwriting, what was inspiring to you about him?
Well, a lot of things. I actually learned a lot from him. My musicianship increased 100-fold working with him. And he, there's a guy who really is kind of a lyrics first kind of thing. Because I remember he used to always go, he was really picky about the sound, and he would do like these 2-hour sound checks, and it was just like him on the guitar. Tower Power gets on stage, and we do like 20 minutes. You guys good? You guys good? You guys hear anything?
Right.
Yeah, let's go.
Hit it.
So,
right.
And sometimes we'll spend some time. Sometimes we might spend sound checks like that too, just to relearn new songs and stuff like that. But a lot of times, if we have time with time constraints, we'll get up there pretty quick. But he was really really picky about the sound, and he'd even get a wireless mic and go and hear what the PA sounded like. And so and his whole thing about that was, it's really important for me that people hear the lyrics. So And those were important to him because that was, he wanted to tell his story. He wanted to get that across. So I did learn a lot about, like I said, musicianship from him because he was probably about 14 years my senior or so. And by the time I met him, it was, I don't know, I was about 30 years old. And he had already been around the block, as far as he had a successful career as a solo artist and the Youngbloods, and then as a solo artist again. So
you kind of caught him on that. You caught him on the third wave, yeah.
Yeah, third run of, actually it was the Youngbloods. That was actually the last incarnation of the Youngbloods. And so with a band with Jerry Cortez, the original guitar player, had left. He wanted to do some other things. And then Banana was still in the band. And the drummer, Joe Bauer, had already passed away. So it was the drummer who'd played with Pablo Cruz. Dave Perper was in the band.
Wow.
And Jesse was playing bass, and I played guitar. And Banana, Lowell Levenger, also known as Lowell Levenger,
right.
That's his real name, he was playing keyboards.
Wow.
And anyway, so I learned a lot about the recording process because I did 3 records with him. And then I also just learned a lot about, even just as a soloist, as a guitar player, and how to make things different and unique within each song. This is actually kind of a funny story. We were on an airplane ride, and he had this is back in the days when he had a Walkman and a cassette. So he goes, "Hey, Jared, come back and sit here. I want you to check this out. Check out this guitar player." And he goes, "My son's really into this guitar player." And so I went and sat down and put on the phones, and it was Yngwie Malmsteen, the shredding guitar phenom from Sweden, phenomenal guitar player. So he plays this just really fast, articulate, kind of almost classical-esque kind of guitar playing. I don't know if you've ever heard Yngwie.
No.
Probably have.
Mm-hmm.
So I listened to this, and I was like, I kind of gasped at his technique and his prowess as a guitarist. He was really phenomenal. Young guy, too, at the time. He might have still even been a teenager. So I listened to this on the way to a show. So we get to our show where we played our show. We got done with our set, and I was just having I felt like I was really inspired after hearing Yngwie. I felt like I was like, look, Mom, I'm in a band. I play guitar. Yahoo! I was like really excited.
Right.
After hearing his guitar playing, I really was. And I get done, and I walk into our dressing room, which is the trailer, and Jesse had his feet up, and he looks up at me, and he goes, "I should have never played you Yngwie." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Every solo you played was the same solo. You played, I've never heard you play like that. What happened?"
Wow. Wow, that's a great story.
So it really kind of taught me a lesson. He goes, "You have to break it up. You have to break up your solos, man. They can't be the same solo every song. It's not every song's meant to have the same sound. It's not supposed to have the same approach." And I just had this thing in my head, like I said, yoo-hoo, I came here to rip.
Do you think that you were you a bit of were you an autodidact in that sense, where you could just hear something and then all of a sudden you're just playing it?
No, not at all. No, not at all. Because I can't play like Yngwie at all. I was just inspired by his.
But it's kind of cool. I mean,
playing,
when did you listen back? You listen back to stuff like that, and you're like, "Wow, that's really cool. It doesn't sound anything like me." You just you kind of went off. I mean, Demiola said that. He was all he ate some LSD on a New Year's show, and a friend of his taped the show, and it was a band, it was a fusion band, and somehow the tape got to Chick Corea, and that was the tape that Chick decided to bring Al in to Return to Forever. When Al heard the tape, he's like, "Wow, this sounds nothing like me, but I love it."
Yeah.
I mean, I guess sometimes I think inspiration is it's got to be invigorating for someone like yourself to constantly be inspired. And I think in this day and age, with so many things going on, people can get downtrodden. They can psych themselves out. They can come up with excuses. But inspiration, I just wanted you to talk a little bit about, something that has inspired you in 2015 that kind of just humbled you, but also inspired you?
Oh boy, probably every time I get up on stage, any one instant, it's because I've had not only just performance things, but being in the studio. We're working on Tower of Power's working on another record, and right now I'm in kind of like a guitar overdub mode. Like all the basics have been done, and right now we're working on sweetening and adding extra little parts to already existing guitar parts. So I'm working with Emilio Castillo, the leader of Tower of Power, Joe Vanelli, and another engineer also from Canada, both from Canada, Joe Vanelli and Joe Primo. And so the four of us are in the studio. And Joe Vanelli, I don't know if you know, Joe Vanelli is the keyboard player, an older brother to Gino Vanelli. And just being in the studio with him is an inspiration because throughout the 70s, I was a big fan of Gino Vanelli and specifically Joe Vanelli, to be honest with you, because I could just see that because he always included his brother on the albums, and I did get a chance to go see him play live, and I just remember watching him live, and as much of a focal point that Gino was, I could tell that his brother had a big influence on what was happening on stage, the sound, the songwriting, the harmonic richness that band has, and all that. So in the studio, Joe Vanelli has these just crazy, great ideas. Like, wow, and he's a keyboard player.
Right.
But he really knows how to get inside of a guitar player's head, and he knows what guitar players are capable of doing. So, and he'll go, well, try this chord voice, and instead of that, and I'll go, wait a minute, I know that's a bit of a stretch on guitar. So he knows how he doesn't play guitar, but he knows the inner workings of the guitar enough to know that that's gonna be possible or not on guitar, or that sort of thing. So just being in the studio with Joe Vanelli, it's a humbling experience as it is, because he's somebody I've always kind of looked up to very much, as well as Emilio Castillo. And Emilio Castillo as well also has really great ideas.
That's sure, that's right. Yeah.
From a guitar player standpoint, stuff like, yeah, that's something I actually would have thought of, but I didn't. You thought of it first, kind of thing, or I never would have thought of that. So, but that's what's really good about being around people like Gino and Gino Vanelli, not Gino, excuse me, but Joe Vanelli and Emilio Castillo, because they're great leaders and know how to, and they're great directors and know how to get the most out of musicians, and that I really appreciate. So that's been really, really inspiring to me, just as a musician, and humbling at the same time.
Sure. It's
like how did I get here?
Yeah, no, it's but you do. That's the other thing about Emilio. I've talked to Garibaldi a bunch of times, and by the way, if he's listening out there, I want him to get better real soon. A couple hip replacements. He'll be back on the road hopefully soon.
Yeah, hopefully in November. That's the word. That's the working month for now. Anyway, we're thinking about. Yeah, but
he said that Emilio.
Abel Drummond and Herb Matthews has been filling in for me.
Sure. No. You know what it is. I know Emilio delegates responsibility. He treats you guys. He knows what your strengths are, and he doesn't micromanage. And I think that's why the band has stayed together in its amalgamations for so many years. Jerry Cortez. I want to just we have a game on this program called Name That Tune. I want to let you know that this is inspiring to me. It has been for many years, way before I started the Jake Feinberg Show, when I was a bit nomadic and walking, doing exercise on tracks on these, and I just. But for me, like you said, why do I belong here? I sometimes pinch myself when I get to do things like this. So let's take a listen to this song, a couple minutes, and we'll come back and talk about it.
That sounds great.
Music on the Jake Feinberg Show, sponsored in part by the Stereo Hospital, the Circle Tree Ranch, Abbott Taylor Jewelers, and Dee's Island Grill. God bless you, Jerry Cortez. Can you name that tune? Can you name that tune?
I guess it's called "Don't Need Love." That's with the band Go Ahead.
I mean, I want to tell you, yeah, that was Brent Mydland singing lead vocals on Go. That was a show from October 29th, 1986, and I got to tell you, I never saw the Grateful Dead. I was born in 1978, so I mean, this is for me when but the guys in that band are they've meant a lot to me. They've helped me through a lot of times, and then I started studying this period of time when Jerry went into a coma, and Billy Kreutzmann put together this band called Go Ahead, and I have this show from my father's place, and I mean the banter on stage, from him, he was putting Dave Margen's hotel key in some envelope and giving it to some girl, and I'm just like this is the. I mean, I just want you to talk to me. Please tell me how the first time you connected with Billy and how you wound up in Go Ahead.
Well, first off, I just want to say you're talking about the banter on stage. Whenever we were on stage, it was like we're just a bunch of guys standing in their garage having a good time.
Oh,
man.
My God.
That's what that whole scene was like for us. We just really loved each other's company, and especially on stage, man, just because it was just a great chemistry. And it just really fell into a really cool thing. I met Dave Margen through the drummer I mentioned to you earlier from the Youngbloods, David Perper, and he introduced me to Dave Margen. And David Margen had already been in Santana. In fact, I saw him play with Santana when he was like 17, 18 years old. Santana opened for the Stones at one of the Day on the Greens, and but that was before I knew him. And he came from Berkeley, and he was in a great group of musicians from back then called Salsa de Berkeley, and that's kind of how he got the gig with Santana.
Wow, this is
a
great.
Bunch
This is
of
great.
Musicians from Berkeley High School that were just killing it. We're talking about the San Francisco music scene, man, just all over everywhere, And so it was really through Billy Dave Margen, who I became really good friends with, and he was really kind of like a brother to me in the band. We, the two of us, hung out all the time. We were the two, like, we're kind of like thick as thieves on the road. We did everything together. We ate. We did everything but shower pretty much with each other. It was really it was a really great brotherhood.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, it really was. It was a beautiful thing. So he introduced me to Billy because he had a band, a short-lived band. They did a tour or two with Brent, and a great guitar player I can't think of his name now.
Is Kevin Russell? Is it Kevin Russell? Kevin Russell.
Kevin it'll come to me. I'm just drawing a blank. Sorry.
It's Kevin Russell. Kevin Russell.
Kevin Russell. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Kokomo.
Sorry, Kevin. Sorry for listening. I know you
Kokomo.
are. I love you, brother.
It's all right.
Kevin Russell, and they had a band called Kokomo for a minute. And so, and then eventually, David and I were actually, before that happened, David and I were actually in a band called the City Section. So it had Alex Lidgerwood, who was also lead singer in Go Ahead. So it had Alex Lidgerwood, David Ferber on drums, Dave Margen, and a wonderful keyboard player who had played with Herbie Hancock named Nate Ginsburg.
I know that guy.
Wonderful player and a great friend as well.
That's great.
And so the band started off as called the Kreutzmann Margen Band. That's how it actually started. And then
how did Margen? So Margen and Margen and Kreutzmann just knew each other from back in the. I mean, because Dave was much younger than Billy. So,
right, much younger. Yeah. So he's just through Bill Graham's association. Santana and the whole Bay Area scene. So that's how they're fans of each other's groups, of course. So
the Kreutzmann Margen band.
That's how it came to be.
Yeah. Right.
I'm sorry?
No, continue. I didn't mean to break your thought. You said it was the Kreutzmann Margen band originally.
Yeah.
But then when go, I want you to take me through this. Go ahead.
Yeah. So it started off as the Kreutzmann Margen band, and then so Billy was really the only member of the Grateful Dead, and so apparently Brent was kind of in the wings, going, "Hey, that sounds like fun. I want to be a part of that." So Brent got involved,
right.
And then eventually Bob Weir got involved as well. So by the time, well, we didn't really have like a grand plan for anything. We just were out there playing and having a good time, and just kind of filling in dates in between our own dates. I was playing with Jesse Colin Young at the time. Alex was kind of in and out of Santana. And the Grateful Dead were still kind of doing dates, but they were kind of waiting for Jerry to heal from his diabetic coma he fell into. So,
that's right.
And then that was mostly not so much touring dates, but they were working on their Touch of Grey album that it eventually became one of the most successful albums. So as Jerry started to heal, they were working on Touch of Grey album, and then that took off, and then of course, they just ended up working more and more. So eventually, so the Go Ahead thing lasted between like 86 and 88.
I was going to ask you about
just for a couple of years.
Yeah, no, but I want to tell you, I mean, this is like my years of focus are all the pre-coma years for Jerry. After In the Dark, they got real pop commercial and everything kind of changed. I mean, they needed that time to cement their legacy. But when I listen, I mean, you guys were on these relentless tours. Can you talk about, I have not a hard time. Could you talk about, because you played with a lot of great drummers. You play with them now, you've played with them back when. What is distinctive about Billy Kreutzmann's drumming style?
His shuffle. He'd use this term, but he plays a shuffle like an old black guy. It just sits so far back in there. It has such an amazing feel. Listen to Truckin'. I mean, that's Billy. I don't even know if Mickey Hart I think is part of that. I don't know all the discography stuff, but that's Billy shuffling. He was a shuffle king. He's still my favorite shuffle drummer. I love the feel of his shuffle playing. It's remarkable, actually. And there's a lot of drummers that I have played with that are just phenomenal chops for days to technique, and other types of grooves that they just really kill on, but they might be a little bit weak on the shuffle. And that's where Billy kills it.
Right. He's a little bit.
That's what.
Yeah. Would you say that he trades up a little bit of.
What was the question again?
No, I was just gonna say, like you said, there are cats who, they have monster chops. Their technique, their precision is good. but maybe Billy gives a little bit of that in replace of just having a great shuffle feel.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's just his approach to drumming is very unique. Like when he's not playing a shuffle, it's very unique, and it's almost kind of random in his approach. So and it can be a really fun thing to play along with. And then you've got somebody like Dave Margen, who's comes from a heavy pocket groove, and the Latin thing as well, and then you kind of put that with Billy, and it was kind of it made for an interesting groove,
I got to tell you, man, this stuff is just. I mean, did you play any original tunes that you might have done in that band? I know there was a lot of like Traffic covers and like Not Fade Away. I just love, obviously Brent tunes were there. We just cranked Don't Need Love. I mean, I'm like crying listening to that tune, hearing Jerry Cortez just wailing away on that tune. I think Brent must have surprised you a little bit. Brent was a ferocious player, man.
I love Brent. I miss Brent so much. I really do. He was such a good guy, man. He really was, and a remarkable musician. And even at rehearsal, man, he was playing like it was the last time he was going to play. Every time he just went to go play, his whole body, you would just see his body move into just wow.
Yeah.
This thing, man. He just moved, and I'm not kidding. We used to rehearse that. It was called Front Street, and it was on Front Street and like the funky part of San Rafael where the old Litchfield's hotel was, and there was like hookers and just really. It was just like, this is Marin County.
This Shakedown Street. Yeah, this is great.
Like 2-block neighborhood, and it was like drug dealers and hookers. And Front Street was right in the middle of all that. And that's where we rehearsed. And it was, you'd walk in there and you'd go, wow, this is Grateful Deadville in here. Because you'd walk in and there are big banners from their concerts, the big skull and crossbones things would be hanging up and just gear everywhere. And couple semis parked in this big garage. It was a big warehouse, and they had all this recording equipment out, and Jerry's famous guitars were out on guitar stands, and all that. And Jerry used to come by and listen to us rehearse and everything. He was a sweetheart as well. He dug the band actually.
He said he liked the band. He liked it. This is classic. I didn't think Jerry was even. It's funny because I didn't realize, you're right. The band had quite a little bit of a shelf life. It moved on in 87 and 88. There's actually some great stuff on YouTube of you guys shredding in like Vegas somewhere. So Jerry actually came in. He dug the band. I think the band.
He did. I remember we played a gig. We played some club.
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting because we would play in the Midwest, South, and the Northeast, and we did really, really well there. And we played one gig in the Bay Area, and it was in Concord, and the place was like half full.
I love
Which
it.
was I just don't think they promoted the show, but that was the one show that Jerry came to, and that might have been the first time he saw us play actually, because it was after that he would come to rehearsals and just hang out
classic.
with us. And but I remember backstage he walked up to us, and he was the first guy backstage after we finished our show. He's back there. He's all dressed up, too. He's, like, wearing a suit. I remember it. He had a cigarette in his hand. He goes, man, you guys are effing great, man.
Oh, my God. This is,
like a jolly Santa Claus. And it was really cool, man. It was really nice to, have that kind of appreciation from somebody like him.
Oh, I just think it's a special part of music history. People can talk about things already being written, but there's always more. And that's one of those things where I can tell you this show is just hysterical because Kreutzmann's like, he's getting on the mic and he's like telling this girl, gave her this envelope. He's like, open it up. And then she opens it. He goes, you know what that is? He goes, that's Dave Margen, our bass player's room key. I'm just like, this, get me to that. I mean, and I know people that saw those shows and it just blew people off the power of the band. But no, I want to go back to, this is something that's interesting. I interviewed Narda Michael Walden, and you go to his Wikipedia page or something, and it starts with the Mahavishnu Orchestra and meeting Sri Chimnoy, and with Jerry Cortez. I want to know the first studio gig that you had in the early '70s. When was the first time you were in the studio?
The first time I can remember being in the studio was to do a round table pizza commercial. And I remember I was hired by this woman who's a very talented woman. She was a keyboard player, singer, and she played trombone as well. Her name's Carla Piper. Mm. And I just thought she was a powerhouse. And the two of us, I played on the track. My brother played drums. And I'm pretty sure she used this guy named Don Haas, who was a piano player. I'll get to him in a minute. That guy's incredible piano player. Yeah. So anyways, we sang a duet of "It Takes Two." The Tammy Terrell and Marvin Gaye tune. We did around. I remember we sang "It Takes Two, Baby. It takes two, baby. Round table and you." Something like that. So we just did a duet of that, and I was just like, I was hooked, like, I got to do this more. So she ended up calling me for a lot of other sessions and other commercials and jingles and things like that, and I ended up playing on her record too, and she invited Don Haas to play again. Don Haas was the guy that Frank Sinatra would ask for when he came to play the Circle Star. So that's who this guy was, much older gentleman who, you talk to just about any keyboard player in the San Francisco Bay Area, and you ask them who they studied with, Don Haas usually comes up.
His last name is spelled Haas. Is that it?
Yes. Yeah, Don Haas.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Right on. Wow.
And he's passed away. It's been a while now, but he was just a real sweetheart. And I ended up doing kind of casual dates with him down the road as well. But just it was just every time I was in the room with him, it was like I learned something. It was like going to school. Watching him at work and watch how he recorded, because he just had so much more experience. He was old enough to be nearly my grandfather, really. So,
well, I mean, one of the elves.
Anytime I was around older musicians, it was like, okay, pay attention. It was always like this voice in my head, like, pay attention here, Mm-hmm. So, anyway, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I wanted to ask you about, did you go to places like Jack's on Sutter? Did you get to see Michael Howell and Calvin Keys? Did you get to see a lot of the jazz? Was that the kind of thing that you were taking in live? Because those clubs, I mean, I've interviewed Chester Thompson, play with Santana. You might have played with Chester. Just the idea is that these clubs were open at 6 a.m. and they were having organ trios with drummers singing, and it was this is ridiculous. I mean, I look back at that time and I say, as a 37-year-old living through I'm not going to say it's vapid because there's stuff going on. It's just there's a saturation of music. There's a supply and demand issue. There's all sorts of things going on. But to be back in that time when there was no social media, when it was so innocent, when really the ego had not superseded the music, I just think that, to me, for you, I just love you to paint the picture of going to see these cats at places like the Both And or Jack's on Sutter. Just break that down for me.
Well, you know what? All that whole scene you're talking about was just a little bit before my time.
Right.
I was still in high school, not quite old enough to go to these places. But I got to tell you, man, that it's been such a blessing I've been in Tower Power since January 2010 to meet up with the guys in Tower Power, David Garibaldi, Emilio Castillo, Rocco, and Doc. And Mick Gillette. Mick Gillette was in the band when I first joined, and those guys talked fondly of all those days. My days started. I started playing clubs like around 1974. I graduated in high school in '74, mm-hmm. and there was definitely stuff going on. And for me, I'm so grateful that I grew up where I grew up. I grew up in Santa Clara, so there was this plethora of clubs to play in back then, and every night of the week. And I was playing in bands that we did covers, but that really wasn't what we were doing. We were playing our own stuff, and people would come out to hear this music, and they would know the lyrics to the songs. We had no records out on the radio. We weren't even selling records. at our gigs.
Wow. They still
They
knew
just
the
got
song.
familiar with our music that much.
Huh.
They got to, they just followed us around everywhere. And if we ever did a cover song, they were going, "Why are you guys playing that?" That's
Right.
like, we came to hear your stuff. Stop playing that stuff.
Wow.
We want to hear your stuff, your music. So there was a vehicle for bands to play their own music, and and some actually would be playing their own originals, and eventually they got record deals and had really successful careers, like the Doobie Brothers. They started off with this little chateau in the Santa Cruz Mountains called Chateau Liberté. They played there all the time. I used to hear their name, and that was even a little bit before my time too. I was still in high school, and it was I couldn't get into these places just yet, but I'd hear all the time, like the Doobie Brothers tonight at the Chateau Liberté. And one day I walked into a record store, and it was their first album. I went, "Oh, here's the Doobie Brothers."
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, the music, I guess at the time maybe people weren't aware, but it just, commerce developed straight out of the community itself. I mean, it's really quite remarkable, and that lent itself to the regionalism of the music. I'd like you to focus a little bit on, yes, you were pretty young when you joined Santana, but was that a Margen? Was that a Margen connection?
I was never in Santana. Dave Margen was in Santana.
Dave Margen was in
really young. He
Yeah.
was 17 when he joined Santana.
When did you first? You and Margen knew each other. When did you first meet each other?
We met at a recording session, actually, and it was this drummer, David Perper, I mentioned earlier, that introduced me to him, and invited. I think it was through David's. I got invited to do this session, and David was the bass player on the session, and I remember it was at Hyde Street Studios, and a gentleman named Chris Lockheed, who was a drummer. I think he still plays with the New Riders every once in a while. It was actually he was working on some material of his own. Whether or not that ever came out, I'm not sure, but I remember really enjoying working with Chris Lockheed and David Margen, and Nate Ginsburg was also on keyboards. And then eventually, that's how that band City Section got started. And the whole band City Section, Bill Kreutzmann actually talks about the City Section in his new book. But City Section was a band we wanted to, kind of like the Tower Horns. The Tower Horns are on like a gazillion records, as the horn section. There's somebody that's done their discography. It's unbelievable how many records these guys have been on. The Tower Horns, and they toured with the likes of the Rolling Stones, and they played with Elton John and Aerosmith, and just who's who and recording. And the City Section wanted to be kind of like a rhythm section that did that, that backed up singers or an existing horn section or existing that sort of thing. So that's kind of what that was kind of our goal. But we eventually just did more just performing and that sort of thing. And then eventually Alex got reassigned as a lead vocalist in Santana. So, and we really wanted to do it with Alex, so we just folded it up.
Let me ask you a question. What did Kreutzmann talk about? Was he in City Section, or he just was mentioning it as?
No, he just mentions that during the time that Alex, Dave Margen, and myself had a band called the City Section, and he talks about what I just mentioned about us wanting to be our goal was to be a backup band for on recordings and performances. That's kind of what we were, kind of like a band for a rhythm section for hire. That's kind of what we were, because I remember we were all really digging on the group Toto and how Toto was we wanted to be the Bay Area version of Toto, I guess.
Right.
Is what we're kind of our goal. We were it's like, because Toto's out there, those guys are playing on a lot of great records too, Thriller and to name one outstanding record, but many other records as well, Bobby Caldwell recordings and that sort of thing. So we wanted to be the Bay Area equivalent of Toto, like, so to speak.
Jerry, as we wrap up part one here, I wanted to ask you, for so many people that are, it's taken me 4.5 years really to carve out a niche and find my groove, find my voice, and I have a plethora of content. Some of it's great, some of it's not, whatever. It's just huge. and it's unique and it's individualistic, and you have your own individualistic style and sound. And I wanted you to talk to younger cats, as I'm sure you do at clinics and things like that. But what is your advice for cats who are just, being relentlessly pushed with electronic beats, but also people that there's so much available to comp out there? How did you develop your own individual sound?
Probably by just getting out and playing and working it and honing it and experimenting with it. Sitting in my bedroom didn't do me any good at all.
Right.
Well, I shouldn't say it didn't do me any good, because it basically helped me with the rudiments, things that I needed to learn about playing music, with theory and music and technique and all that kind of stuff. That's all great and fine and dandy for the bedroom, but eventually you've got to get out and either play, whether you're a solo artist or you want to be a team player in a band. So I've always been really fortunate that I've always surrounded myself around excellent musicians. I've always felt like I was really fortunate that everybody I ever played with, they were either like their skills, like they had more knowledge and skills that I did, and I learned from that, or we were on par with each other, So I think that's, and then just, stuff like, Jesse telling me, hey, man, you got to mix it up, man. You can't make every solo the same, man.
Right.
You can't think like Yngwie on every solo.
But let me ask you. But because I know what he's saying. But do you feel like can you is there credibility in saying that the amount of you started doing live gigs in '74, the propensity of places to play live, whether the audience was half full or not, just getting up on the bandstand and being able to play and get comfortable, that helped you as well become comfortable with your own sound?
Absolutely. And but just getting a chance to get out there and play in front of people and take chances and see if stuff works. The stuff that you tried to work on in your bedroom. Okay, let's see if it actually works as a song.
Right.
That sort of thing. I read a really interesting article just recently about. In fact, it came up on Steve Stevens. Steve Stevens, the guitar player from Billy Idol, and who's a remarkable guitarist and musician. And I guess Billy Idol and Van Halen did some shows together at some point early on in their careers, and Van Halen and Steve Stevens really hit it off. And they both agreed that, a lot of the people that they were influenced by were really similar, and there were guys like Clapton and Peter Green, and they realized that a lot of guitar players today, they're speaking from a guitar player standpoint, have a lot of really incredible technique and a lot of chops, and but are lacking in soulfulness.
Feel, yeah, that's right.
The feel,
right.
The feel is gone.
That's right.
And the people that they listened to, it sounded like they had whiskey on their fingers, because they went out there and they actually played live. They played in bars, they played in honky tonks or whatever it was, And I got to say that I never drank, but I've got some whiskey on my fingers, that's for sure, because I really did. I started playing at a really young age, and I'm really grateful that I got to actually play live and not just sit in my bedroom like a lot of kids do. And I've known some people that they not only do that, they sit in their bedroom and they learn how to play guitar through, teach themselves, or they have a teacher, and they never get out and play any gigs. And the next thing I know, I hear they're actually teaching.
Well, we got a. I mean, we're just beginning to cook because I have so much that I want to talk to. We have to do part 2, Mr. Cortez. Yeah. I just want to tell you, I got to get to Ralph Nader, but it was a ball to talk to you, Cortez. It was a ball, man. I really had a great time, man.
Likewise.
All right,
say hello to Ralph and tell him I missed the Corvair.
Yeah, we'll be in touch, my friend. Have a beautiful weekend, okay? Have a good weekend.
Thanks a lot, Jake.
All right, later on. We'll be right back on the Jake Feinberg Show. Bye-bye.